Hi, I'm Christine Gritmon. Welcome to Social. I do this live stream show every Friday at noon where myself and a guest talk about social media. And this week's guest is Lindsay Owen.
Hello.
Lindsay, I brought on, I've been wanting to bring her on for a while because she does all sorts of things, but the thing that I wanted to bring her on for is she's really good at Instagram, and she works at a couple different boutiques, like just one town apart from each other, and yet like she does such different things on their social media, and then her social media is different. So she's really got a good sense of brand voice and distinct brand voice. I actually used her as an example in my Simply Measured webinar about a recurring element. She's the recurring element in some posts from the editor in Piermont. And we're right here at her other employer, Maria Luisa in Nyack. And Lindsay also does her own Instagram, which is totally different from the other. So she really gets a sense of differentiating and having each thing be its own thing. So we're going to talk about all of that. So Lindsay, hi.
Hi, Christine. Thanks for having me
Thanks
today.
for being here.
And coming to Maria Luisa's.
Oh, twist my arm. Twist my arm. I actually had Maria on the show a couple months ago, but this is different. So first let's talk about how you got started. Like, you work at two different boutiques. How did that happen?
Yes. So to make a long story short, I moved up to the area about 2 years ago. And I always had an interest in social media, but specifically my interest was getting back into the boutique world. I have grown up in retail pretty much my whole life, and it's in my blood, so to speak. But social media was more of a passion versus actually working as a salesperson at a boutique was completely different. So started out with that. I liked the idea of being in two different settings because it actually helps keep the creativity flowing. That way you can kind of compartmentalize and see things from a different perspective on a more ongoing basis versus I feel like a lot of the times, let's say you're doing social media for one thing, you can sometimes become stale.
Yes.
So I think each one kind of helps out one another.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I started doing it because kind of, you know, we needed to.
Yeah.
Maria's, she had already been doing it for a long time herself and was looking for someone else to kind of take it on and put it in a different direction. And then at the editor, they had just opened, so they really need someone to begin it. So that was the starting point for the social media at both stores.
That's great. So how would you describe, first of all, the difference between the stores? How would you describe each of the stores? And then how would you describe how you communicate that on social media?
Yes. So obviously a lot about Instagram is telling a story and also creating a lifestyle and a persona. With the editor, it has a lot to do with the editor herself. So she's not a real woman, but she's a woman that we have created in the space. So the way we set up the store is as if it's this woman's apartment. She loves to read. She is definitely worldly. She likes to travel, and she has a great sense of fashion. So that in the Instagram is translated into a few different portraits, so to speak. So the portraits might include our quotes that we do. They might include the outfits that the editor would wear, and then also what she might be reading and decorating her apartment with. So that's that persona. And with Maria's, it was a completely different challenge because she has a business that's been around for 30 years now.
Yeah.
So she's undergone so many changes in terms of her persona over the years. But the real core of it was, how do we create an Instagram that's showing the many faces of Maria Luisa?
Yeah.
So it's not only the two stores, but also the community. Maria does so much within the Nyack community. So I interlink a lot of that. So slightly more lifestyle driven, I think, but also very product driven as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And here, and also the editor, is it pretty much just you doing the stuff for the most part? Are you sort of directing that at the editor?
Yes, it's completely me. And then obviously, you know, we all take the photographs together when we're taking photographs of each other. But
yeah,
as far as the creative direction, yes.
And then here, it's sort of three of you, right? It's at least three of you, because there's Maria herself, who's very involved, and then there is Julie, who's fabulous.
Yes.
Julie ML, or whatever it is on
Julie
Instagram.
ML.
She's fantastic. And so how does that come into play here? Because it does feel cohesive. You know, it doesn't feel like it's an Instagram that's not curated. It doesn't feel all over the place. So how do you kind of get there with these different voices?
So for Maria's, at the end of the day, I am the one that posts everything. So I kind of have that last final, seal the deal sort of creative perspective. But a lot of the times we're coming up, for example, right now we're doing a campaign called 30 Looks of 30 Years. And the Instagram looks a little different right now because we're rolling out a completely different feeling to celebrate the 30th anniversary.
Yeah, it's a temporary promotion, sort of.
Exactly. So if you look at the Instagram right now, it definitely doesn't look like it does on a normal week, so to speak. But one thing I really started doing here, and I've also now translated into the editor, is I create a blueprint each week as to what I want to communicate, and also visually how I'm going to lay it out. Because one thing that I still think about a lot when I'm posting is the artistic element. And when you look at a page, you want to be able to see a variety of images versus the same style and the same photography perspective over and over again. So here at Maria's, on a typical week, when we're not doing a specific campaign, we do a combination of what I call vignettes, which are when I put together a bunch of different products on a flat lay, and you can see visually how you would put things together.
And I've shopped those vignettes before. I've seen something in one of those and been like, I need to go there and get that thing.
Yeah, because it could be clothing, it could be housewares, it could be jewelry, footwear, you name it. So that's one specific style within Maria's I like to use, because it also breaks up color. It's a white flat lay, so white draws your eye in a different way than something else in the store. So I always do those. I usually do one once a week on a typical week. And then we also do lifestyle posts. So we usually do at least 1 to 2 that either have to do with NIAC or what Maria's doing. So that adds a different element. And then the other type is usually product or storytelling. A lot of what we do here has to do with a mission. So fair trade, eco-conscious, sustainability. So our audience is really focused on that. So a lot of the time we'll focus on a specific product, tell its story, why we carry it. So those are kind of the 3 different types of Instagrams that we do. And I always lay it out each week. I still write it down first because I'm that kind of person and I'm very visual. So I'll write it out, look at it. If it makes sense, I'll add it to our Google Calendar. That way everyone knows what's going on.
Oh, that's great.
But I started doing that, I think, about 8 months ago now. So it's really helped.
Great. And have you noticed an increase in, do people shop the Instagram, kind of?
Yes. And actually, a lot of the time we have customers, like you said, they'll come in store and say, oh, I saw this. Where can I get that?
That's great.
So that's been excellent. And it also, it validates your creative perspective too, because a lot of the times, just like anyone, when you're putting it out there on social media, the web, you name it, you want to know that people are listening.
Anybody see it?
Yes.
There.
You want to know people are listening. And that's been great. And also we've tried to link it up with our online store as well. So a lot of the times I'll add Instagram images to our website with Julie and kind of tie that all in together. So that's a work in progress as well.
Cool. So then with the editor, how does your process differ there?
So that one, like I said, I've now adopted a blueprint there as well. A little different because we do a lot more portraits of us actually wearing the clothes. And we also do a lot with the written word. So that is,
because she's an editor.
Those are the two prime characteristics, I would say. But also we have tried to incorporate different stills, I like to say. I don't do vignettes there because that's specific to Maria Luisa's. But I like to add in a slightly artistic element to give you an idea of the space that we're in. So
yeah, I definitely noticed that about the editor, because the 3 main kind of recurring things that I noticed there are, first of all, you don't just show the written word. You show the written word on the chalkboard that's outside the store, and that's a key difference. It's not just text on an image. It is an image of the chalkboard, which is right outside the store. And a lot of times you can actually see the store in the background, the window, the sign. And then also the blue Vespa, the blue Vespa that is physically outside the store, and which is what people notice as they're driving by. And the blue Vespa is frequently in not only the chalkboard images, but also the images of the people who work at the store. And it really is consistently just a few of you.
Yes.
Which is great. And you're different ages and you're different, types. And it shows that you have stuff that looks great for all these people.
Yes. And I think that's one thing I learned the most while testing out different types of images all across Instagram is people want original content.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the time when you scroll through Instagram, you see that people are taking images from others or, you know, using text from someone else. So the more original you can be, the better. And I think that people respond to that really well. They want to feel like they're a part of your life, whatever that might be. So.
And here's what this shirt looks like on a person who is physically there in that shop, as opposed to here's the manufacturer's picture of that outfit, which I always feel is never a good idea, because then why should they come into your boutique as opposed to ordering it online? But they should come into your boutique because all this other stuff is going on.
Yeah, and just like here, you know, we spend so much time merchandising and putting things together that you want to see an image of what the store actually feels like.
Yeah.
You want to have that personal connection. Even though it's on the web, you want to feel like you're there. Yeah. Even if it's someone shopping from California.
And I feel like that's really well communicated in both of those accounts. And then you, of course, use Instagram yourself just as a person.
Yes.
So how does that, obviously that differs about you're not selling something, but how do you kind of differentiate there?
So for my own personal one, obviously, you know, it's my life, but it's a lot to do with my personal interests. I try to separate myself from the boutique world a bit, but I definitely still, you know, add posts here and there of what I'm doing at both stores. But a lot of it is travel. It's my dog, of course. He's very prominent. Most of my photos. Living in the Hudson Valley and kind of a glimpse into what I like to do on my days off, you know. It's a little bit of everything. And I think in terms of personal Instagram development too, I make sure to follow individuals that, you know, share those similar interests and lifestyle. And I've actually met people through Instagram.
I love
that way.
So it's been really social media in general.
Yeah. So spending the time to follow accounts that are not only visually appealing, but actually engage and give you new ideas. Actually, a lot of my new ideas for both stores even come from my own Instagram.
Yeah, and it informs your aesthetic.
Yes.
To be looking at these different things. So now, as someone who embraces, you know, numerous different brands and who obviously is looking at different aesthetics as well, as you just said, what are some key things that you think really make a good Instagram post, regardless of what your kind of brand is?
Yes. So, and also, I guess, depending on what you are actually posting.
Yeah.
As far as a photography standpoint, I will always say natural light is your best friend.
Yes.
Natural light is by far the number one thing I think about when I'm posting an image, because you're not going to have a clear, consistent image unless you have some natural light. So that's huge.
It makes such a difference.
It really does. And also imperfections. I like taking pictures in a way that doesn't look like you said, like it's taken from somewhere else. So it might, if I'm taking a picture of food, for example, from my own Instagram, you're going to see like maybe a little rumpled napkin in the corner, or, you know, giving it a real aspect. So I like imperfections.
From a catalog.
Exactly. And same with posting clothing and images from the store. You know, I like to do things off center in one shot, and then one might be a bit more pristine, and then one might be a little crazy. So it's good to have a mixture of styles. And I also think about the community that I'm speaking to a lot. So whether I'm posting, you know, I'm out on the weekend having a craft beer at a new brewery, what community am I speaking to with that? I'm posting,
me.
Yes.
Me.
Or
I like that post.
Yeah. Or I'm at, you know, the editor, and I'm posting, you know, what we're reading right now. Or I'm here and I'm posting something about our new fair trade jewelry collection. Speaking to all these different audiences. So I think aesthetically, your image should attract to who you think you're speaking to.
How about text? What are you feeling on what makes a good Instagram caption?
So I think less is more. I do try to usually only do one sentence unless I'm fully explaining an outfit and or, you know, a mission of a brand, for example, here. But I usually try to have one statement, and then I actually spend a lot of time thinking about hashtags. I test hashtags all the time. And before I select the hashtags I put in my post, I research to see how many hits each one has. So I'm not using useless ones, so to speak. So hashtags that are going to translate into the community that I want to speak to, and also ones that are actually seen.
There are two schools of thought on hashtags.
There are.
And I'm curious. One of them is use ones with a lot of hits, so you're part of a large conversation, a broader conversation. And then the other is sometimes using ones that are a little smaller so you can really get your arms around it and own it. So where do you tend to fall on that?
I actually do a little bit of both. So I use big hit ones for things like, hashtag fair trade fashion.
Yeah.
That's a big one. That's pretty broad. But then it will be hashtag Nyack, hashtag Hudson Valley shopping, very specific. So you target a broader audience that might be interested in fair trade brands, but then you also target a local audience that might be looking within their community. So I do a combination of both.
That reminds me, the editor has 2 locations. So where's the other one again?
Charleston. We actually recently moved the Charleston location fully online. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So have they kind of taken on a similar aesthetic on their social media? I haven't been looking at like the Charleston specific one. I don't even know if they have.
So I actually do all of it now. So I combined it into the editor shops instead of it being 2 different things, because really the Piermont store is the only physical store now.
Okay. So then that makes sense. And both of these have online shops. So that's going to, that means that in addition to those local audiences and getting a sense of the store, you're also going for the broader audience, which is great.
Exactly. And, I'm always testing. There's no exact formula. Everyone always like to dissect an Instagram, but everyone's going to be different. And even with my personal one too, I use a lot less in terms of hashtags.
Yeah.
But as far as selling and shopping, there are certain ones that definitely help with the hit rate.
Nice. All right. And how can you tell which ones are working?
It translates mostly in terms of likes, but not even so much likes. It's more commenting and engagement.
Yeah.
So I'll notice that we'll get Instagram direct messages by certain hashtags and certain posts. If I notice that one post isn't getting so much traction in terms of looks or impressions, I'll definitely change it up the next time.
Do you ever go back and edit the hashtag in one of those posts?
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes I do. But a lot of the time, I just learn from one and I move on and, try something new on the next. So
nice.
It's always a moving target. There's always new things to try. And, I get a lot of that inspiration, like I said, from following a lot of other people and engaging myself in other conversations.
Have you been using stories at all on Instagram?
I actually just started playing around with it. I have to say, I'm not a Snapchatter. I don't do any of that, so it's new to me.
Yeah.
But I'm learning. It's kind of fun, and I think that I'll implement it more with the stores. I just haven't come up with a plan yet.
Yeah. It's tricky. I think a lot of people are still getting their arms around it because it does feel a little different from Snapchat to me. Snapchat feels more like the heavy Snapchat users, those young people are really like, it's more direct. They're not using it in terms of stories the way that brands are. I feel like that's not the way the actual audience is consuming things, whereas Instagram, the audience is a little older and a little more accustomed to seeing something more cohesive.
Yes.
So I think that over time, even though Instagram stories is kind of Snapchat copycat, I think over time it will differentiate itself as being more cohesive.
Yes. It's still something new, and I find it really interesting. I just haven't integrated it into my day-to-day quite yet, and I think that's going to propose a new challenge for me too in terms of the multiple accounts, because stories are very in the moment.
Yes, they are.
So unlike I'm here some days, I'm there other days, I have to be in the physical space in order to
well. I'm looking forward to checking it out. And everyone check out Maria Luisa Nyack and the editor Piermont, or is it just the editor shops?
The editor shops.
The editor shops. And is Lulu and Lohut public? I think. Okay. And Lulu and Lohut. I linked to all of them in the promos for this stuff. And again, this was Lindsay Owen. I'm Christine Gritmon. I do this every Friday at noon. I talk to someone. Sometimes it's a fellow social media professional. Sometimes it's a small business owner or someone I changed it up. So it's on my Facebook page. Always my Christine Gritmon Facebook page. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm C Gritmon on both. And yeah, see you next week. Bye.
Happy Friday.